Recording now. So good morning, everybody. So today we're going to start looking at Kanban. We're going to start looking at Kanban, understanding Kanban. Now, if you recall, when we started this journey, we talked about how Agile is an umbrella term for different frameworks and how Scrum and Kanban are the two most important Agile frameworks. Now, Scrum is very popular with software development. And as we know, Agile actually started from software development. But Kanban is also quite popular with software development. Some software developers actually prefer Kanban. Now, what is Kanban? It was developed in Japan in the late 1940s by Toyota engineers. It is a highly visual approach to managing the flow of work. And the word Kanban really translates in Japanese to visual card. So just like you would see an advert on the road, on a billboard, that is what Kanban is all about. It's about visual. It's about visualizing information. That is what Kanban is all about. And it came about with Toyota. Now, do you remember the comparison we made between Toyota and Ford? Do you remember? What was the comparison we made between Toyota and Ford? What was the advantage Ford had over Toyota?
Yeah, you said Ford they had land to store their cars. Why Toyota did not have the advantage of land? So they make it and sell them off immediately or something. I think that was
something absolutely, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Ford had the privilege of space. So they could create, they could develop 1 million cars and they have a place to park it until people can buy it. Toyota, on the other hand, if we know our geography well, I'm not great at geography. Japan is a small place when it comes to landmass, okay? It's a small place. So they didn't have that privilege. So they had to come up with a management system. They had to come up with a production system that could, be just in time, if you like, that could still be effective without that benefit that Ford has. So that was how they started reviewing their production system, their manufacturing system, to say, how can they have a value stream that is lean? So when you hear of lean, the origin of lean management started from Toyota, Japan. How can we be lean with our processes, okay? How can we be less wasteful with our processes? Because remember, too much inventory is waste, right? If you remember the various waste that we have in a lean environment. Too much inventory is waste. It can be considered as waste. You have all these things in your warehouse and you are not shifting it. That's money you are tying down. You are tying down money. So they had to come up with this just-in-time management style, and they wanted that flow. As we are producing, it is going to the showroom, and as buyers are looking at it in the showroom, they are buying it. For the most part, they may have even collected some orders from the showroom. So this is how this all came about. So what are the principles of Kanban? Focus on the customer value creation. So in other words, it's a pull system. It's not a case of we're just going to produce what we like, pack them in our parking lots and hope that people with money will come and buy it. No, they focus on what the customers want. Our customer is private equity, says here. Everything we do should create value for them on their terms. So Toyota is quite keen on also getting feedback. Okay? They are not into that pushing mindset. They are into the pulling mindset. And if something does not create value for them, it is waste. It's that simple, okay? So they were more interested in the pull system, knowing that this is what we need to manufacture for the customer. Once we then manufacture it, we push it to them. It's not a case of we just coming up with what we like. So feedback was quite important in their environment. Make the team's work visible. This is where Kanban comes in. If work is visible, then we can very clearly see the bottlenecks. If work is visible, we can very clearly see the bottlenecks. Make it visible so that we can see whether there's a flow, whether there's something hindering our flow, whether we need people to whether we need to add more people to a particular activity so that we can remove that bottleneck. It's like driving in traffic and, you have a bottleneck, and then you see people coming out of their cars to sort of resolve the bottleneck so that the cars can, start flowing again. I'm sure we've seen that on a few occasions, especially in Lagos, okay? Although in Lagos, what usually happens is you'll see a madman that is trying to control the traffic of educated people in suits. That is usually the visual that we see in Nigeria. But however, that is the whole point. We're trying to resolve that bottleneck so that things can continue to flow again. Then we have what we call WIP limit. We want to minimize what we have in process. Because you see, I'm sure you've heard me say this before. Stop starting, start finishing. Stop starting, start finishing. When you have too many activities open, when you are trying to multitask, eventually you become unproductive. When you are trying to multitask, you eventually become unproductive. Can somebody tell me why? When you try to multitask, you eventually become unproductive. Why is that?
You're exceeding your capacity. You don't even understand your own capacity.
Well, you're not necessarily. You have the capacity to do it because you are working with velocity. You have
It takes time to switch.
Thank you very much. Switching. Context switching is what I'm looking for. Context switching. How many times have you been doing something and somebody comes to talk to you? Okay? Somebody comes to talk to you and then you remove your attention from what you're doing and then you start talking to that person. And then by the time they go, you are like, where was I? Where was I? It takes you maybe a few minutes to get back into the flow. Because what happened was that person interrupted your flow. Are you with me? That interruption interrupted your flow. And there's one thing I call being in a state of flow. I'm sure you all experience it, where you are learning something and you are just into it. And there are days when you know you are not in flow, but we also know when we are in flow. And the days I don't feel like I'm flowing, sometimes I'll just switch off my computer and go and watch a movie. Okay? I'll go and watch a movie because maybe I've just been at it for too long. I'm tired. Because there's no point. I either go and sleep or I watch a movie or do something else. When I'm in flow, I also know and I get on with it. Okay? So when we are working on multiple things, we are actually not productive in the end. You did this one a little bit, you drop it. You do that one a little bit. As a Scrum Master, this is what you are looking out for. If you see people opening too many tickets, that's an opportunity to coach. To say, why do you have all these tickets open? Do you know it's actually not as productive as you think? Because the idea, the mindset should be that you should stop starting and start finishing. Remember, we have all the columns and the last column is done. So we are trying to get our stories to done faster. The moment we start opening tickets, things are stuck somewhere in between. There's something still here. There's something still here. We want flow. We want throughput. And we want to get those tickets to done, as opposed to having so many tickets opened. Okay? So when you see that, even on your Scrum board, because we'll come to that in a minute, even Kanban, the concept of a Kanban board is also used in Scrum. And we've already experienced that. We had a Scrum board. Okay? We had a Scrum board. But more discipline goes into a Kanban board in terms of WIP limit. More discipline goes into it when we're using Kanban. Okay? So, WIP limit, as you begin to experiment, if they are using Kanban, they will have to experiment what WIP limits they should put on each column. Because you can't get it straight away to say, oh, this column, we should have a 6. This one, we should have a 3. That one, we should have a 2. It will not be apparent at the beginning. But as you begin to work as a team using your Kanban, it will become obvious what the WIP limits should be, okay? So limit WIP, limit work in process by having a WIP limit, okay? Measure your effectiveness. Measure things that create value to customers. Also measure what matters to those who give you internal resources. A team doesn't just exist for the sake of it. A team exists to create value. And that team is being paid a salary to be there. They have organs at the top. Okay? The sponsors, what is important to them? For example, in Toyota, what is important to Toyota? That a car gets to the showroom and somebody buys it. That's what's important to Toyota. That we are able to manufacture a car that meets high-end quality, it gets to the showroom and it's bought. In fact, it has been pre-ordered itself and it meets the needs of the customer. So what matters to Toyota? Quality will matter. Quality will matter to Toyota. And how do they measure quality? They will have their own system of measuring quality. Sales will be important to Toyota. Okay. So in every environment, what needs to be measured will vary from customer to customer or from organization to organization. What the organization wants to measure will vary. So as a Scrum Master, you need to know what matters to that organization in terms of metrics. You need to know what matters to the organization in terms of metrics. So measure your effectiveness, measure what adds value, okay? And that will be a conversation between the business and the teams in terms of what needs to be measured in order for it to be clear that they are, meeting the objectives. Continuously strive to improve. In fact, we just talked about it when I said we will be in an ecosystem. Why? Because it hasn't ended. The journey has no end. Okay, that's why I said you people have entered one chance. It has no end. Okay, but the beauty about it is that I know you guys will enjoy it as much as I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. I love it. And my mission is to make people love it. So you will love it too. And it will be a journey that you will enjoy and you will begin to empower people too. Okay, so these are the Kanban principles. These are the Kanban principles. Focus on value creation for the customer. Visual management. Okay, when we talk about visual management, some organizations have gone to the extent of having what we call an obeya. An obeya is a room where they visualize their metrics, they visualize their risk and impediments and incoming demands. I will show you a picture of an obeya where I used to work. I'll show you tomorrow. I'll make sure I get them ready and show you tomorrow. So they've taken visualization to that level. You can also have digital visualization with digital tools like Confluence. Your Confluence space, for example, you can visualize your information there. Because don't forget, the people at the top there, they need high-level information to make decisions. So Agile coaches operating at the enterprise level are helping them do that. For example, where I used to work, I created the Obeya room. I actually created that. The Obeya room was bare. I created the Obeya room, sent all the things to the printers, of course, the internal printers, told them what I wanted, how the information needed to be validated, and to make it easy for people to follow. Because when we are having some of our meetings, we're having those meetings in the Obeya room. So
Sorry,
that,
Mary.
yeah.
Mary, is Obeya, is there an acronym for?
It is a Japanese name, it's just a visual room. That's all it is.
Oh, okay.
It's after OBEYA. So I created the Obeya room, and that's where we had our meeting. So as we were having our portfolio and performance meeting, as new demands are coming in, we are looking at what we have already committed to. And we are saying, okay, if we need to take on this new demand, then what do we need to take out? What are we going to deprioritize? So the information is there for everybody to see so that everybody can make valuable contribution. So now that we are working remotely, who is going to use that physical room? Now, all that information that was in the physical room has to be on a digital board somewhere, has to be on Confluence, so that when we are now having our remote meeting, we are doing exactly the same thing we did in the same room while we were co-located in the same room. We're doing that digitally. So visualization is so key for Kanban because that is how we see if there's a flow, that is how we see if there's a bottleneck, and that is how we see if things are flowing as consistently as we want it to flow. Okay? So that's it. So the goal here is to limit waste. We already talked about lean. So as you can see, the whole idea of Kanban is also to help us limit waste. Visual display of workflow makes disruptions to workflow easy to see, and team members can collaborate to rectify issues before they get out of control. The approach also limits the amount of work in progress, getting stories or work items to done faster, minimizing context switching. This minimizes buildup of tasks, which invariably waste time and money. When you open too many things, you think you're working faster, you're not. Now, the whole point of Kanban is to pull work. Kanban is based on a pull rather than a push system. This means that team members only start work when they have capacity, avoiding a pile-up. We're talking about the use of the Kanban now. So take, for example, even in a Scrum environment, we go through our sprint planning process. We have a two-part planning process. The first part, the product owner is telling us this is what my priorities are, blah, blah, blah. And then based on our capacity, we pull. We then take those stories, we pull the stories into our sprint backlog. The second part of the sprint planning is that we are now breaking the stories further into tasks. Okay, and once we're happy that we've broken them as much as possible, even at that point, remember, if we have further questions, the product owner is available. Once we are happy, we just start pulling. We just start pulling different items of work to get done during our sprint. Kanban is great for projects with frequent deliverables, e.g. call center frequently, but also popular for software development. Now, I think I made a mistake in my sentence there, but what I'm trying to say here is this. If you look at Scrum, we are happy in a Scrum environment to have a deliverable every 2 weeks. Maybe we are developing an app or a website. The product owner has told us by the end of 2 weeks that he or she will be happy to have a landing page for their university or for their supermarket. They're happy to wait for 2 weeks because there's a lot we need to do to get that landing page ready. But when you are working in a call center and a customer that you have, your high-end customer, okay, imagine a bank where you have a customer that deposits that has about 1 billion in your bank, and they are threatening to pull their money to another bank. You will not wait for 2 weeks to answer them. You will not. Now, Kanban it's much more suited to a very, very dynamic and volatile environment. And I have used a call center to explain this before. So a call center, somebody is at the end of their credit card of a call, and this is something to do with their credit card. Their credit card, somebody has just stolen their bag, and they have called your bank, maybe Lloyd's Bank or Barclays Bank, whatever the case may be. They've called the call center. You can't wait 2 weeks to attend to them. You cannot. That is an emergency right there. So in that kind of situation, what do? You raise a ticket. You raise a ticket that Mary Lanion has just called in. She's in Dubai, but they have just stolen her bag. So what does Mary Lanion want? Mary Lanion wants you to cancel all her cards with immediate effect. She wants you to cancel all her cards. That cannot wait. So that kind of ticket most likely will have to even go through the emergency express lane. You will soon see what that is. That kind of ticket cannot just wait. It cannot wait. It's too risky. You have to attend to it. So we will soon see what we mean by express. So Kanban is great for projects like that. We are not developing a software landing page that can wait for 2 weeks. Immediate volatile environments. Kanban emerged out of the need to work efficiently and cut waste. And I used the Toyota and Ford system already. And this is just an example here, emphasizing more on Toyota and Ford. Now, in the Toyota system, we talked about small production. Ford, they had the benefit of big, huge batch size that Toyota did not have. And the other thing I want you to pay attention here to is warehousing of parts. It says is the main in Ford system exactly. Ford had this benefit of space, whereas Toyota did not have that benefit of space. They had to keep very minimum inventory. Okay, very, very minimum inventory. Okay, because they didn't have that space. So those are the two areas that I really want you to pay attention to. And of course, that meant that Toyota could then attend to things just in time, whereas Ford were thinking more of the push rather than the pull. Okay, that's what really matters here. Now, when we talk about Scrum and Kanban, there's a difference. In a Scrum environment, you have a cross-functional team. You have a developer, tester, UI, UX, and we are saying that in a Scrum environment, we want them to be truly cross-functional. So I'm a developer, but I can test. I'm a tester, but I can do UI, UX, whatever. We're talking about a T-shaped profile in a Scrum environment. In a Kanban environment, not necessarily. I use the word not necessarily because you will find that in some Kanban environments, maybe they're also trying to do a bit of this, a bit of that. But ideally, in a Kanban environment, it is okay if somebody says, all I do is test, all I do is develop, all I do is UI, UX. But in a software environment, you will find that there's also a benefit to be cross-functional in a Kanban environment so that if there's a blocker or there's a bottleneck, we can swarm. When we talk about swarm, just like we do in Scrum, is to say, okay, there's a bottleneck here. Let everybody leave what they are doing. Let us come and help to clear this bottleneck. So as you can see already, there's a benefit if, we are cross-functional also in a Kanban environment. So that's it. Now, when we talk still about Scrum versus Kanban, Scrum is iterative, as you've already experienced in the practicals. It is iterative. We have a roadmap. And based on our roadmap, we are working, on a 2-weekly basis in more detail based on, based on the roadmap. We're working according to the roadmap, but we are planning in short iterations. We have our annual roadmap, and then we now have our quarterly planning. Okay, this is what we're going to do for the whole 3 months. We now begin to go into more detail in the quarterly planning, and then much more detail in the 2-weekly planning. You can see that gradient there, okay? We start with a very high level 1-year plan because we don't want to behave like we did in the traditional waterfall environment, because what you are planning for December, you are in January, you are already planning in detail for December. It might be a waste of time. You might end up not even working on 80% of what you planned, okay? That is why we only put in enough effort at the roadmap level to know the direction we want to go. And then we now minimize our effort to the quarter to now say, okay, for the next quarter, what are the likely things we should be working on? Then when we now go into a little bit more detail. When we now get into the sprint level, that is when we go into absolute detail of what we want to do. So Scrum is iterative, okay? Every 2 weeks in a software environment mostly, and we already know what happens there. Kanban, on the other hand, is not iterative, it is continuous. It is not iterative, it is continuous. So let's go back to the call center. The call center is using this Kanban board. Calls are coming in, they keep coming in, they never stop. They keep coming in. As they are coming in, we are prioritizing. Somebody has just called that their credit card is missing, that becomes a high priority, okay? And we are just walking through the board. We are just pushing our tickets through the board. This is, some organizations use Salesforce. There are a lot of sophisticated ticketing systems out there. Jira is one of them, okay? They use Jira for things like that too, where they have like the kind of thing you have for Salesforce. They have it within Jira, customer-facing Kanban, okay? So it is continuous. That is the main difference between Scrum and Kanban. It is continuous. Now, I did say earlier on that you've already used Kanban, but you used it in Scrum. But you used it in a very light manner, okay? You used it in a very light manner. We didn't pay too much attention to WIP limits and stuff like that, okay? We used it on within our tool, our Quick Scrum tool. Now, in a Kanban environment, what is different here is that we are now saying we really want flow. We want optimal flow, okay? We want throughput. We want to reduce lead time. We want to reduce cycle time. You will begin to understand what these are very shortly. We want to reduce lead time. We want to reduce cycle time. Now, what is lead time? What is cycle time? Imagine me in Dubai calling this call center in London. I call them at 12 o'clock. My wallet has been stolen. It is important that they act on that speedily. Now, from the time I call them to the time they cancel my credit cards, that would be what we call lead time. That would be lead time. From the time I called, they picked up my call, I complained about my bag being stolen, to the time the action was actually taken and I got a call saying, Mrs. Lanyon, we have canceled all your cards. That is lead time. So maybe I will look at my wristwatch. I call them at 12:15. By 1:15, they have called me to say it has been cancelled. It may even be immediate. That is how sophisticated things are these days. It may even be immediate, but I'm just using that as an example. For something really urgent, they might actually say, can you please hold on? And while you are holding on, they are attending to that case. So, which means the person who took that call, if she was working on anything before, she will have to put that thing on hold and make my query express. So for something like that, it probably is a case of me actually holding on and those cards being canceled. Of course, they will go through all the verification, security verification and all of that and cancel the card. But just for the purpose of this example, imagine it took an hour. That 1 hour is the lead time for that organization. What is the purpose of all these measurements? So that when they go into their strategy session, when they go as a business into their business improvement sessions, they will begin to use these metrics to say, okay, are we responding fast enough? And then sometimes the reason these metrics are also important is that some organizations have contracted out their customer services to another organization, to a third party. They have contracted it out. So all these metrics are religiously, I use the word religiously, documented, so that because there's what you call service level agreement. There would have been some kind of service level agreement between the organization and the third party that is providing the service. So the organization that gave out this contract wants to see what the lead time and the cycle times are, whether this organization is meeting up to their SLA, because they can lose customers. Imagine somebody in Dubai who called and then 6 hours later, they still hadn't responded to them. And by this time, somebody has gone to do touch, what do you call it? Touch and pay or whatever, has gone and used that card to buy things everywhere that was less than £30. Because if you have your touch, whatever, you can just
contactless.
What do you call it? That was what I was trying to remember. Contactless. You have a limit of about £30. You can just go everywhere and start buying, if you are a thief, and start buying things that are $29.99 and getting away with it during that period. So a customer that calls to complain about that, obviously the organization will not be happy about that. That means the third party organization was not meeting up to their service level agreement. So just for you to understand that. And if you look at this Kanban board very well, you can see 1, 2, and 3. So in development, they have a WIP limit of 3. In testing, a WIP limit of 2. In deployment, a WIP limit of 1. Now, when you put a new Kanban team together, will they automatically know that development WIP limit should be 3 and testing should be 2 and deployment should be 1? No, they wouldn't know immediately. It will be through experimentation that they will now realize that, you know what, it is better for us to have 1 as our deployment, because that is, we want to deploy into production. We have a lot of work to do there. We need to pay attention to things and make sure that things are done properly, whatever the reason is. But you will have to experiment. It's not just a number you just get from the, out of the air. It is as a result of, how things are happening that you are able to come up with those numbers. So Kanban is, in the case of Kanban, time boxing doesn't work, like we just said. I've just given the call center example. Time boxing does not work because we're not developing something that will take us 10 days to deliver. We are attending to issues. However, in as much as we're not developing something, I already said organizations like Facebook, they are releasing, they are doing CI/CD. So I'm sure some of you are already making that connection between Kanban and CI/CD. So Kanban, a lot of organizations that are doing DevOps and CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, are now beginning to see Kanban as more suited to work in a CI/CD environment, because it's not a case of we start and stop. We start and stop. We keep integrating and we keep deploying. So some organizations are already working like this. So time boxing doesn't work for Kanban. It's easy for you to integrate Kanban with other processes as well, because it's not as if there's a hard demo point. So depending on other interfaces that you have that is interfacing with this team, then it becomes easy to say, okay, we can do this together tomorrow, or we can do this together next week. It becomes easy because it's a continuous process. And it says minimal entry barrier. Here, what they mean by that is because it's not necessarily a cross-functional team, it doesn't always have to be a cross-functional team. You can just come in as you are, and you can just start where you are. You don't have to learn Scrum. You don't have to go through the overhead of the sprint cycle trying to understand everything. You understand? You can just, it's easier to kick off with Kanban than it is to kick off with Scrum, is what they are trying to say here by entry barrier. And then it says organizational constraints. It's also easy to work with organizational constraints because, again, you don't have a hard 2-week sprint. It is continuous, okay? So those are some of the subtle differences between Kanban and Scrum. Any question at this point, please? Any questions at all at this point? Is it clear?
Yes.
If nobody is talking, then I'm assuming it's clear. If you don't have any questions and if you're not saying anything, I'm assuming it's clear that I can continue. Is that correct? Is that the right assumption?
Yeah, that's fine. Well,
Yes,
for me.
yes, please.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so visualizing workflow, we already talked about that briefly. Visualize your work on a board, which we have done physically, but now with COVID, everybody is working remotely, so we're talking about digital board these days. Use colors to represent the theme of your user stories. There are different post-it notes. What they mean here, for example, if you have a risk, you may have agreed as a team that if there's a risk, we use a pink or a red post-it note so that it really stands out. So, you know, once you see a red post-it, you know, wow, that is a risk. When you see a blue post-it, you know that's an impediment. Whatever the case may be, that will be something that is agreed by the team. Again, this is about your way of working. You're trying to work efficiently, you're trying to work, you know, effectively. So how you decide to visualize your board will be totally up to you. You may also decide to have a risk log, have a risk backlog somewhere so that once there's a risk, it is there and it is visualized in a certain way. Within that board, again, you have your incoming demand. Okay. Sometimes some people have a slight small area where as things are coming in, that is where it goes. It doesn't go straight to the backlog. It goes into a parking area. And then from that parking area, once things come in, we know that there's incoming demand. So at the next meeting, that is the first thing we are discussing, because you see, if it goes straight into the backlog, it may get lost in your pile of 500 items. So some people like to work in that manner. Okay, this has come in. It is a priority. What are we taking out from the backlog in order to make this a priority? Because you are constantly doing a trade-off. Columns are by type of work or whoever is responsible for undertaking it. We'll soon see what we mean. Easy for team to view work in progress, work that has been completed and work to be started. We have our backlog, we have our to-do column, we have our doing column or in progress column. It's easy to see what has started and what hasn't started. It is easy to see what is done, and it is also easy to see bottlenecks. And when we talk about the columns, you can have a column that says development, testing, validation. You can also, it depends on the environment. You can also have development and have Doddy's name there, and testing and have Henry's name there, the person responsible for it. It is totally up to the team what works for them, okay? As long as the visual management is working for us. As work gets completed, move your cards from left to right. Now, there needs to be a discipline. We have our Kanban board. I picked up a task from to do and I put it in doing. When we have a task in to do, it means we understand, it meets the definition of ready, essentially, because you will see a backlog and then you will see to do. Now, if the task is in doing or in progress, let's assume I finish this task at 12 o'clock. I must have that discipline of going straight to the board. I'm done with this task. I'm moving it to done. When I leave this task tomorrow, there will be an illusion that it took me so long to finish this task, whereas I finished this task yesterday. So as you can see, it's an environment that requires discipline. Otherwise, our charts will be reflecting what is actually happening. Will be reflecting our movement, not what is actually happening. That's what I wanted to say. So I finished something 12 o'clock yesterday, but I did not move the card until 12 o'clock the next day. That is what your tool is going to track. That is what your tool will track. So we need that discipline. Keep your column labels simple and intuitive. Don't make it complicated. So when people come, it's easy for them to see. Now, when we start a Kanban board, an easy Kanban board could be backlog, to do, ongoing, and done. It can be that simple, okay? I would imagine if I wanted to use Kanban in my house with my children, this would be okay. Things we need to do. When it is ongoing, we can see that it's in progress. And once it is done, it is done. You can use that. You can use Kanban with your family, by the way. Dodie, I know you are already doing that. Now, it can be this simple. You can go one step further to say, okay, you can only have 3 items in progress. Okay? You want to discipline your children to stop starting and start finishing. If you have 3 children and you're using Kanban board for them, then maybe for each person, you only want 3 items in progress, or you only want one item, in which case you will have 3 items here. Okay? And then when it's done, we can see it's done. Now, we inspect and adapt with the WIP limits, like I said. We will know what works for us. We will know. Now, in as much as we say we don't want to multitask, there are times when it's easy to do 2 things because of the nature of the thing you're doing. So you have to experiment to see which WIP limit will work for you. Now, talking about limiting work, say that again.
I didn't know it was Kanban I was doing.
Yeah, you were
with my kids, I mean.
Exactly. Well done. Set a limit on how much work can be in progress at any one time in each column. That is what your WIP limit is all about. In other words, yeah.
Yes, so I was watching a video
Yeah.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
And the principle underpinning that work in progress limitation is capacity management. So that's what it said.
Partly. Yeah, partly capacity and partly minimizing context switching.
Yeah, because context switching is the fact that you have a capacity. So if you now switch your context, you're going to jeopardize that capacity.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Capacity is a huge part of it, because depending on how many people you have, that's why I said you have to experiment with it based on your context. You can't just say.
Yeah. So it's similar to when we say we have a velocity in Scrum.
It's a control. Yes, you are using velocity to control. Yeah. Absolutely, Grace. You're using velocity to control how much you can do. WIP limit also is controlling your flow. It is controlling your flow, because remember, here we do not have a hard start and stop. What we have is continuous. So we want that consistency in the flow. If we start opening too many things, we will be getting stuck because we are trying to do too many things and nothing is getting done. And remember, this is not as if we are in a Scrum environment where, even though we may have opened so many things, we know we will finish all of them by the demo date. Do you see what I mean? So here we want to open a ticket and get it done as quickly as we can. And that is why we are using a WIP limit, so that we don't create bottlenecks. Okay. And of course, your capacity has a lot to do with your WIP limit as well. Okay. In other words, how many cards can be in each column at any given time? This ensures that cards are moving smoothly across the board as and when the team are ready for them. So you have your backlog system also in a Kanban environment. You need to make sure you understand the story. Okay, you need to make sure you understand the story. You also prioritize in this environment. It's not as if we just pick anything randomly, no. Otherwise, we will not be meeting the needs of the customer. Okay, so we have a backlog. We will soon see some of the pictures now. We have a backlog, and based on that backlog, we are also doing exactly what we would do in a Scrum environment. Do we need a use case diagram? Do we need a data flow diagram? We're having all these sessions. We're having design thinking sessions also. Even though we're not doing Scrum, you still have to understand your story. You still need a product roadmap if you're developing a software product. You still need a product roadmap. You still need your design thinking. You still need to empathize with the customer. And based on that, you are prioritizing your backlog. So the backlog you see in Kanban is also prioritized, because you are now pulling what adds the most value into the to-do column and then moving from left to right with that. So it says that the to-do column should be filled with the top priority work from the product backlog. When you have a space in your to-do column, you can fill it with another user story from your product backlog. By setting work in progress limits, the entire team can quickly see if there's a blockage and collaborate to fix it. Setting WIP limits eliminates multitasking, which is the ultimate productivity killer. It kills productivity when you do not set WIP limit, especially in a Kanban environment, where you do not have a hard deadline or a hard end for your sprint, like you do for your sprint, okay? It is a continuous delivery environment. So we need to make sure that we are starting tickets and we are completing them. Teams can assist other teams when bottlenecks are identified regardless of expertise. This is where I was now saying, in this environment also, if we are multidisciplined, it adds benefit. It has its own benefits, even though it's supposed to be a specialist environment. Okay, it adds benefit because when there's a blockage somewhere, bottleneck somewhere, we can all come together to undo that bottleneck. So in a software environment, like I said, in a Kanban environment, this is the backlog here. This is a backlog where you are looking to prioritize your backlog. You are also working based on value, and you then pull it into your to-do and then develop.
I can't hear you.
Testing. Say that again.
I think we've lost her. She's lost.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Can you hear me?
We still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can. We can.
Okay, sorry, my internet bounced.
Okay.
Let me just be sure the recording is still okay. It is still recording. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Let me share again. I am sharing again. I'm sharing again. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm still recording. Okay. So we still have a backlog system. We would still do our design thinking. We will still identify dependencies and all the things we would normally do. We still do them. And then we pull them into the to-do. So for you to pull a story into to-do, it means it's ready, more or less, okay? Now, as you can see here with the development, we have now progressed to a situation where the development column is broken down into 2. The WIP limit remains 3, but the development column is broken into ongoing and done. The whole point of this is that it becomes obvious to the tester what is actually done, okay? What is actually done in terms of development, and then the tester can now pull it. Again, the testing column is split into 2, ongoing testing, ongoing and done testing. And then when it now comes to deployment, we know exactly what is done in terms of testing. That is the whole point of the second level splitting of the columns. That is all this is about. Now, like I said before, to-do is ready and prioritized because we have pulled it from the backlog. As you can see, in terms of the alphabet, that is prioritized, and we still have our columns there. So to-do meets the definition of ready, and then the work continues from there. Now, okay. Now, what are we saying here? Requirement session is happening. Product vision, product roadmap, epic breakdown, dependencies identification, design thinking, use case diagram and descriptions, data flow diagrams, stakeholder meetings. Everything is happening in a Kanban environment, just like you would at the beginning of any project, whether it is Scrum, whether it is Kanban. You need to do all these things. We need a high-level roadmap. We need to engage with the stakeholders. We need to have a product vision that's going to guide us. We need a product roadmap. We need to be sure what we're doing. Now, I'm waiting to see if somebody will ask me, what are the roles in a Kanban environment? Do we have a product owner? Do we have a Scrum Master? We don't necessarily have a Scrum Master in a Kanban environment. We don't necessarily have a Scrum Master. But if you're doing Scrum Ban, then you have a Scrum Master, okay? You still need a product owner. Somebody needs to own the deliverables, okay? Somebody needs to own the deliverable, but they may not call that person a product owner. Don't be surprised if they do not call that person a product owner, but what that person is responsible for is what a product owner is responsible for in a Scrum environment. You will find different variations of these setups in the real world, but you understanding the basics is what's important, understanding it and knowing that just because I've come to another organization and they have a product owner, there's nothing wrong with that. If they've chosen to call their product owner and they are not doing Scrum, that is okay. Let's forget about the name. Let's worry more about what they are doing and making sure that they are doing it well, okay? So this is all happening in a Kanban environment. Now, like I said before, it doesn't necessarily have to be a cross-functional team, but it adds value when they can do more than what it is they know how to do. And then as you can see here, we have different people. As you can see, this one is blue, this one is green, this one is red, this one is yellow. It's a specialized environment. I'm testing, you're developing. In these environments, you probably have more than one tester anyway. You probably have more than one developer anyway. So if one developer is sick, there's another developer. If one tester is sick, there's another tester. But like I said before, there's value still being added if they are slightly more cross-functional. Now, if there's a bottleneck, as you can see, there's a red flag here. We swarm to remove the blockers. So this red flag here is telling me there's something wrong here. Maybe there's a risk there. Maybe there's a bottleneck there. How you configure your system, you will have to configure your system to give you an alert. So take, for example, this column here is 2. The WIP limit here is 2. If I try to add anything here, it will go red. The entire column might go red, depending on the kind of software you're using. In Jira, I can't remember. I think Jira I think it goes red if you try to put something in it. There's always something you can configure to let you know that you are over the limit here. So because it is now alerting you to the fact that you are over the limit, that may now mean that we are swarming to remove this blocker. That is what that means, okay? So there's always a way to be alerted that something is wrong, and how you configure that would be based on your environment. I talked about priority lane when we started. I'm calling from Dubai. They've just stolen my car. That's a priority. That's an emergency. Now, can anybody tell me what can happen with this priority lane? I want you to imagine the bus lane in London. What do you think can happen with this priority lane? Anybody? Just think of the bus lane in London.
I think the priority lane describes when an issue has come up that needs to be done. It's like an emergency, needs to be done right now.
Yeah.
So you just abandon what you're doing and you concentrate on finishing that quickly before you go back to your regular.
Or maybe I'm the one that took the call, but I'm not the one that will do the job. Maybe I took the call. I then know that because this job is a priority, I have to put it on the priority lane immediately. So that when they see something on the priority lane, they know it has to be picked up immediately, right?
Yes.
But what are the potential issues that we may have with this priority lane with stakeholders?
Everybody wants their own to be priority. Everybody wants their task or product or project to be priority.
Fantastic. Just like the bus lane, if there's traffic, you want to quickly use the bus lane. It's the same concept. So we need to be careful that it is not abused. We need to make sure that the priority lane is definitely used only for what is an emergency, that it is not abused. Otherwise, the whole purpose will be defeated. The whole purpose will be defeated because everybody will now say, my own work too is priority, my own work too is priority. And then before you know it, the priority lane is even busier than the normal lane, which shouldn't be the case. And it then becomes obvious to us when there's something on this priority lane that, you know what, we've got an emergency here, and then we can deal with it straight away by prioritizing it over the other stuff that we're doing. So be mindful, especially when you are in a Scrum Ban environment. You're the Scrum Master and you are in a Scrum Ban environment and you have a priority lane. Be sure that it is not abused. Now, do we use Kanban for only one project? No, we can use it for multiple projects because sometimes you can be in an environment, like especially for a software agency, where you are developing software for more than one client. You're developing software for more than one client, or you are developing multiple products for one client, in which case maybe you're using, multiple Kanbans. But there's an easy way to visualize everything together, and this is what it is. As you can see, we've got the green Kanban and we've got that purple Kanban. You can visualize everything in one big wall, so you can see, this is what we are developing for ABC company. This is what we are developing for EFG company, things like that, depending on the context again. Just knowing that it is possible, okay? Knowing that it is possible. Now, if you look at this board properly, you may have different WIP limit for different projects. This one is telling us that the two projects are using the same type of WIP limits. That's what this is telling us, but that is not always true, okay? That is not always true. You need to mute yourself. Okay, so when you have multiple projects on a board, on a Kanban board, sometimes maybe the WIP limit is working for all the projects, maybe not. If the WIP limit is not working for all the projects, then you will have another column here that is telling us what the WIP limit for the ones below will be. That's going to be the case. Okay, so you can have Kanban for multiple projects. Now, talking about metrics in Kanban, what do we want to measure? Who is unmuted there? Can you mute yourself? I'm muting the person who is coming back. Please mute yourself, mute yourself. So we don't have the background noise. Okay, cool. Okay, so by now, your work should flow freely through the Kanban system. It might even feel very easy. Make sure that you keep a lookout for any interruptions in the flow and use these as opportunities for improvement. Use these as opportunities for improvement. Just bear with me. I'm still getting background noise. Let me see. Okay.
The person is DA.
And sometimes when people are talking on their phone, it gets unmuted by itself or something like that. Anyway, you may need to experiment with WIP limit, like I said before. You will not know immediately what your WIP limit should be. You have to experiment. So by experimenting, you will have an idea of what your WIP limit should be, okay? Workflow should run smoothly and not stop and start. That is the whole point. This is not a Scrum environment where we are stopping to do our demo, do our retrospective, and then come back and do start another sprint. It's not a cycle, it is continuous. Choose some flow metrics to track and analyze them. Which ones you choose are entirely dependent on what is important to measure. Every organization is different. For some organization, maybe it is the throughput. For some, maybe it is the cycle time. Based on their context, it's not your headache. They will let you know what is important to them. And it will be a collaborative effort to put these metrics in place, okay? But you need to understand that you should be telling the team, asking the question, what are the metrics? Asking the business, what metrics are important to us, okay? What do we want to track? And most of the time, you have all these tools to be configured to help you track your metrics. So, what are the types of metrics we have in Kanban? I already talked about lead time. From the time I called that my wallet has been stolen to the time they call me back to say, Mrs. Lanyon, we have canceled all your cards. That's lead time. Cycle time is how long it takes for a card to move from doing to done. So how much time I actually spent on the work. So take, for example, somebody picks up the call, puts the ticket into do, then somebody picks it into doing, and then 1 hour later, it is done, okay? The time, from the time it is taken from to do to done is your cycle time. Now, from doing to done is your cycle time. Now, why would this be important? It will be important again for the business based on what it is they want to measure. It will be important to them based on what it is they want to measure. But what you need to know is that cycle time is from doing to done, and lead time is to do to done. So from the moment that to do comes into when we have a happy customer, when it is done, is your lead time. Then you have number of items not started. Are you struggling with your workload? Now we are talking about capacity, Grace. We're talking about, seriously talking about capacity here. Things are staying too long in the to-do. We are not starting things soon enough. Again, we might want to look at our lead time. Why are we not starting things? Are we spending too long? Are things taking too long? Why? Is there a bottleneck somewhere? So now you can begin to see how these things are interplaying with each other. If we don't have a WIP limit, things are piling up in testing. The tester is struggling. And because the tester is struggling, things are not moving fast enough. You have to understand how Kanban is supposed to work to come up with the right solutions of what next to do. Okay? Number of items that are WIP, in other words, are you staying within your WIP limits? In other words, are you moving beyond your WIP limit? If you have a WIP limit of 6, and are you ignoring it and just pushing things nonetheless? You want to be sure that that is not what is happening, so that there will be continuous flow. Blockage areas. Do you see any areas where cards build up, causing a blockage in flow? You want to look at how things are piling up. What is causing it? Okay. And it says here, the tip for Kanban is smooth flow equals creating value. We want to create value. And the only way we can create value is if our tickets are getting to done, if our stories are getting to done. That is the only way we can create value. Because remember, this is a continuous process. So as soon as things get to done, it means we are actually creating value. And cumulative flow diagram, I believe Jira has this one. Cumulative flow diagram is one way of looking at how well we are doing in terms of getting things through the Kanban board to done. Any questions at this point? There are some questions I'm hoping you will ask me, but I'm waiting.
So Mary, to start with, WIP stands for what?
Work in process.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Work in process or work in progress. Was it?
Well, some people would call it work in process. Just know that it is used interchangeably. Just know that.
Okay. All right.
So in some places, you will see work in process. In some places, you will see work in progress. I prefer work in process, to be honest. But then again, it means the same thing, more or less.
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to be sure which one it was. So it's good to know it's interchange.
Yes, it is. There are some questions I'm hoping you will ask. So let's continue. If they come, just let me know. Remember that even after implementing Kanban, the work is never truly finished. Part of the Kanban method is to continuously improve the process. Monitor your Kanban system and make improvements on an ongoing basis. Like we said before, are there bottlenecks? Why? Investigate. Do we have the right WIP limit? Play around with numbers. By the time you play around with numbers for your WIP limits, you begin to see what works best for the
Mary, I was just thinking to myself, under which conditions would an organization take to Kanban?
I gave an example already, which is your business context. Your business context. Oops. Your business context will determine. Your business context will determine whether Scrum is better for you or Kanban is better for you. Now, it's a very good question you brought up here. You start with a company and they are just starting a project. They may ask you, they may actually ask your opinion about this to say, for this project we're about to do, which is better? Is it Scrum or is it Kanban? Now, one of the things that will guide your answer to that will be, if they are developing software and it matters to them that in their context that they are able to come up with something and demo to the organization, then Scrum is okay. Scrum is better. That's number one. Number two, if they are just starting Agile, Scrum is better. Why is Scrum better?
Is that a question to me?
Yes, I'm asking.
How is Scrum?
I'm throwing it back at you. If they are just starting Agile,
okay, all right.
It's better to ask to advise them to use Scrum. My question to you is why?
Why? Because by using Scrum, the organization or the owners of the business will be able to see development on a 2-weekly basis, iteratively. They wouldn't have to wait. Well, in inverted commas now, you can't see my hand, in inverted commas, so it turn into before they see what they're doing, see what the development team or the Scrum team is doing. So what I'm saying in essence is that with Scrum, they're able to see functionalities as they have been churn out.
Every 2 weeks.
Yes, every 2 weeks.
Fine, that is one answer. There's
Okay.
another answer.
Yeah, because can we say because Scrum is adaptive, isn't it? And it's self-correcting. It helps the team. It would facilitate the, it's easier. It would be easier for the teams to be able to learn through things and become self-organizing.
What else can you tell me?
So the fact that it is adaptive.
What
and
else?
it is transparent.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, because it will help everybody to gain momentum, isn't it? And it helps them to be, so they can be, it helps them, the team, to gain momentum of the process, and then they can be accountable.
Okay. What about maturity?
Yeah.
What about maturity?
Yeah, maturity is one. It's yes. So they mature along the process. That's what, well, I think they are mature along the way, because everyone is accountable.
Okay.
So, and then I think the process of the continuous improvement is a very big one for Scrum.
Okay.
To at least argue in favor of Scrum for a new team that is targeting Agile.
Great answers. You're a Scrum Master, you've joined an organization, they're putting a team together, because remember, if an organization is trying to go Agile, one of the two people that they employ first is the Scrum Master and the product owner.
Yeah.
Most likely the product owner will already be in the organization, because the product owner usually comes from the business. And then the product owner and other stakeholders will then interview the person that will be the Scrum Master. So during the interview process, they may even start asking you these kind of questions already. Now, everything you have said is totally fantastic. Mr. T talked about delivering value every two weeks so that they can begin to see value, blah, blah, blah. Franca is talking about continuous improvement, absolutely. Now, the reason you're recommending Scrum is usually, it helps with the discipline and learning of Agile, okay? Because of all those ceremonies, daily stand-up, sprint planning, and because they are new to Agile. Because they are new to Agile, the discipline of Scrum is always not a bad idea. I hope you're getting my point.
Mm-hmm.
The discipline of Scrum is not a bad idea. You will now find in some organizations, as they begin to mature, they move to Kanban. Some organizations started with Scrum. You have the Scrum Master will come in, teach them Agile, teach them Scrum, teach them all the ceremonies. They are doing retrospective, like Franca said, from retrospective to retrospective. We are getting better from sprint to sprint. And then when we reach a high level of maturity, we can now move to Kanban. Because in Kanban, we can now, there's more relaxation on those ceremonies. So you will find that Kanban is usually more prevalent in Agile teams that are really, really mature. But sometimes when they are going through that level of maturity, we may start bringing Kanban in, and that is when we call it Scrum Ban. We call it Scrum Ban. And I'll tell you why you may end up in that situation. Some work contexts are such that the teams may start to complain that the overhead of Scrum, that there's overhead for them with Scrum, that they don't need those meetings anymore, that they don't need that many meetings anymore, okay? In some environment, you may not need that, main demo anymore, because you are now doing CI/CD, maybe. I hope I'm making sense. Because you are doing continuous integration, continuous deployment, depending on the context. I don't want to give any specific example because every context is different. Depending on the context, when you start hearing our meetings are too many, and they are giving you reasons why maybe Kanban will be better for them, don't just go straight to Kanban. Instead, do Scrum Ban. Tell them, okay, let us experiment with Scrum Ban, okay? So which meetings will they relax on? They may relax on daily stand-up. For example, instead of having daily stand-up every day, maybe they are not even having it at all. Maybe they are just talking as they go along because they are co-located anyway, which was usually the case for us until COVID really scattered everything. Okay. So maybe they say, oh, one daily stand-up is okay for us in a week because we are sitting together, we are talking together all the time. That's a few meetings already kicked out of the window. Maybe they feel they were doing 2 refinement before, 1 is enough for them, or whatever the case may be. It will be different for every situation. But the question you want to ask yourself is, as a Scrum Master, how matured is this team?
This team.
Yeah. So in order to help them just move slowly, you can then do Kanban instead of going totally to Kanban. So these are the trade-offs, the thinking that needs to come behind your answers. So,
but Mary, would that team still be able to deliver iteratively in fortnightly?
It depends on the context. It depends on what they want. For example, if you are doing Kanban, then you are probably still doing your demo. You are still doing your demo. Retrospective. If you are doing Kanban, maybe they are saying we don't need retrospective every day, but as a Scrum Master, you know the importance of retrospective. Even in a Kanban environment, we need to continuously improve. Okay, so meet them where they are. For example, with Scrum, we do retrospective after every sprint. Maybe when you are doing Scrum, maybe they are doing retrospective once a month, which is once every 4 weeks. I hope you're following. I'm not saying that is what you should do. Let the context dictate to you. I hope I'm making sense. Let the context dictate to you, but you should understand the rationale behind what we are saying. That is only when you can then be in a position to advise. If you know that continuous improvement is important, when they are telling you they don't want this, they don't want that, you are able to coach them on why certain things cannot just be scrapped. Okay, you think your meetings are too many, fine, but we still need to do retrospective. Can we do once a month, once every 4 weeks retrospective? It will not be a decision about it within the team. You throw it to them. Retrospective is important, so I need you to self-organize. When do you want to have a retrospective? Because now we are not doing hardcore Scrum anymore. We are doing Kanban. Fine. How do we want to use this framework to our advantage? Because remember, you do not enforce frameworks on the team. You are using the framework. You are helping the team to use the framework, not forcing the team to use the framework in the way it actually is. You can adapt the framework for the team. That is why we call it a framework, not a methodology. I hope I'm making sense. And that is why you can have a Scrum team that is doing only 2 daily stand-up, not 5 in a week. I hope that makes sense, because they've come to realize that their environment is not as volatile. So because their environment is not as volatile, it's okay for them to do daily stand-up twice a week. If it is not okay, they will figure it out themselves. And at the next retrospective, they can readjust themselves. So be careful not to go out there and be prescriptive. Do not be prescriptive. When there's a conflict like this, what needs to be done is let's talk about it. Let's find the best solution. And that responsibility will lie with the team, but you are there to guide them. And what is the guidance here? So take, for example, they say, we don't need retrospective. That is when you now come in. You want them to self-organize. But you then come in to say, actually, let me educate you guys on why retrospective is important. Then let them know why retrospective is important. Once they get why retrospective is important, you'll find them saying, okay, that's true, this is important, but we don't have to do it every 2 weeks. It's okay for us to do it once every 3 sprints, whatever.
I have a strong feeling that a combination of both frameworks, Scrum and Kanban, may be difficult to execute in the sense that there are differences between them. You just told us
it is not difficult to execute at all. I've done it with 1 or 2 teams. It's not difficult because I had a team that was having problem with Scrum. They felt it didn't really suit what they did because they were not a software development team anyway. When you go out there, don't think that every team you are going to be a Scrum Master for must be a development team. Because don't forget that Agile has gone beyond software development. You might go out there and you are a Scrum Master for a marketing team. But because they are a new team, you want to discipline them with Scrum. And then as they begin to mature, you move them to Kanban and then maybe finally to Kanban. I hope I'm communicating.
Yeah.
Yes.
Scrum is,
I'm just looking at the differences you mentioned in the course of this session.
but I also said you use it for software development. That was the first thing I said.
Yeah.
You use it for software development, especially when you are doing continuous integration, continuous deployment. They use it for software development. But also, you may go out there and it's not a software team. It is not a software team. But you know what? Scrum is a very disciplined cycle. That is why some organizations, even though they know ultimately that they are going to end up with Kanban, they start with Scrum just to discipline the team. Okay? And to get them to mature. And then when they mature, they move slowly to Kanban. That could be the case too.
Well, maybe because in the last couple of months, all I've been learning is Scrum. It will appear as if Kanban has brought in a new perspective, so to say, which to me is not. It's not as if I understood what all that you taught us, but combining both frameworks for me, it's not really coming together.
But you've already done so already. But you've already done so with your Scrum board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I give you because my organization, Euroclear, only started transformation journey 2 years ago.
Okay.
And at the beginning, as you know, there were some things that were, and for my team and for infrastructure projects, it was difficult to do Scrum. So what I mean, like in my team, what we have is we have a different test and release manager working with different streams of. Some people are working with the Swift team. Another person is working with the UK stream, and another person. So what we've done is because for that purpose we're trying to make sure that there is a T-shaped team. In the sense that, if somebody that is covering Swift is not available, someone else within our team will be able to take it up and say, okay, so we are all following the same release processes and things like that. However, we still have to join those other teams in their daily meetings. And I've seen teams that will say, okay, especially the DBA teams, they had the Oracle data service system, because they have some teams in the data service system. We have Oracle and we have the SQL. They are all in there. And then so what they agreed was like, we can't be doing Scrum every day. It's really difficult because so what they did was for their daily meeting is 3 times a week. So they do it on like Friday, but they have their board. And like Mary said, in Europe, we have a big Obeya room. That's here. You can just go there and see the scope for the quarters and things like that, and how things flows. So they had a big issues with daily Scrum meetings. They have a big issue with planning, because they are working on things that are not that are like going on for quarters and things like that. So what they did was, we'll have this board, and every day you go there and you at the end of the day you move what you've gone. So we have the to do, doing, done. So they're still going to have to move everything and follow the Kanban, so that it's seeing what they're doing, their Kanban board. But the Scrum Master just like said, okay, because this is more like something comes up, a database needs to be migrated or something like that. So you have SLA that they need to meet. So they are working with this SLA. Some is like 3 hours, some is 4 hours, depends on the issue. And if it's a live issue, it's like it has to be dealt with within 4. Everything has got to be concluded within 4 hours or get escalated. So they have those issues, and it was difficult to combine it with. But they came up with a way of using Kanban and Scrum without even realizing, because we had such a very good Scrum Master that came in and was able to help them to get into this agreement.
Okay, thank you very much for that. As you can see, Mr. T, is very doable. And then sometimes you may have a team that is split into 2. Well, when I say split into 2, not necessarily physically, but a team where they have split their roles for maybe 1 or 2 people to deal with the Kanban stuff. I've also seen that. That's why I said what is important here is understanding the concepts behind these things. Because when you go out there, you will now see variations. Because you see, why is it called a framework? I'm not supposed to change how I work to fit into Scrum. If anything, I'm supposed to change the framework to fit into how I work. Does that make sense? It is a framework. It is supposed to be flexible. So that framework is not cast on stone. But the point is, do we understand the philosophies and the principles behind the things we are doing? So take, for example, let's go back to daily stand-up as a simple example. What does the Scrum Guide say? The Scrum Guide say, have a daily stand-up, same place, same time, every day during your sprint. It is a guide. It is not a must. So as a Scrum Master, you come, you see them doing daily stand-up today, and then you say, no, you must do it 5 days. You have killed your job there. That is not how it goes. And they will know you are a textbook Scrum Master. Instead, if they come to you, they say, Mary, we don't think we need Scrum daily stand-up every day. No problem. Why? So you have to ask, why? And then they'll now tell you. And then your next question answer will be, by all means, let us experiment. Let us experiment. When they now start doing 2 days daily stand-up instead of 5, if it is not sufficient, it will be obvious to them themselves. When it is now time for us to do retrospective, we will talk about it. And then they will now say, okay, actually, we didn't need 5, but 2 is too small. We will go for 3 next sprint. Let them decide. You are there to guide them. But the point is, do they even know what daily stand-up is for? As long as they understand, and it is your job to make them understand it. So you use a framework to the context of an organization, of a team. You don't change the team for the framework. You change the framework. And you use it as it will suit them. Okay? You help them use it as it will suit them. Some teams may have a Kanban for certain things, and they are using Scrum for their development. And they are using Kanban for their BAU. We call it run or BAU. Some teams are like that. They are using both. They are using Scrum for their development. And then when their tickets are coming in, for example, the team in Arizona, that's what's going to happen with them. They want to have a Kanban board for their BAU. They can't mix it with Scrum. It doesn't make sense for them. So they want to have a Kanban board for their BAU, and they are going to be doing their development with Scrum and velocity and everything like that. And then devote capacity to the Kanban for their BAU, because they are also supporting the things they develop that is in production. They are a development team, but they are also supporting what they develop. I hope that makes sense now, Mr. T.
Yes, please.
Okay. And like I said in the beginning, there are some organizations when, even though they are starting Agile, they have to go Kanban. For example, if you are a call center, you have no business doing Scrum. So in that kind of situation, as a Scrum Master, definitely I would say it's better to go with Kanban. That would be my advice, because the context just does not suit Scrum at all. But in situations where, either might work, then maybe you want to start with Scrum just to get them a bit more disciplined and then move them to Kanban. I hope that makes sense to everybody.
Question, Mary.
Yes, please.
You remember you said that in Kanban, a Scrum Master is not necessarily needed.
Thank you for bringing that back up.
Okay. So who facilitates all the things like impediments, and who does, how is that managed?
Thank you for bringing that up. Now, every context is different. In some Kanban environments, do not be surprised if you do not see a Scrum Master. If they are doing Scrumban, guaranteed you will have a Scrum Master.
Okay.
I have seen Kanban environments where there is no Scrum Master, so everybody is taking the responsibility for getting things done. But don't forget, we have the product owner. We have the product owner. And then in that situation, don't be surprised if you now have like a lead, a development lead or a delivery lead, something like that. There are so many variations out there, it's crazy. And that is why you need to be ready to embrace those variations. You may find a Scrum Master and they are using Kanban. You may find that. You may find that, but the Kanban role itself, the Kanban framework itself, is not like the Scrum Master role where you have the product owner, Scrum Master, development team. It's not like that. They have development teams and they are specialized in their roles, like I said. And it's a case of having that specialist skill where I'm only a developer, I'm only a tester, I'm only a UI, whatever. And then based on the backlog refinement, again, somebody has to take responsibility for that. Are they calling this person product owner? Maybe, maybe not. Do you get me? Maybe, maybe not. It could be a delivery manager. It could be anything.
Yes, delivery manager.
Yes.
I think that's like delivery management, because with a delivery manager,
Yeah.
you have to be able to manage all of the variations of Agile.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. So it could be a delivery manager and there's no Scrum Master. So that delivery manager is doing a bit of Scrum Master and a lot of product owner. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
No, because I've seen, I was looking at a job advert a few weeks ago, and it talks about very knowledgeable in Scrum, very knowledgeable in Kanban, very like, okay.
And which is why we're covering,
Yeah.
covering Kanban now, because, and you know, we said it's the two most popular frameworks, Kanban and Scrum. But there are so many variations. There's not just one way to do it. That's the thing. There's not just one way to do it, based on the context of the organization. Based on the context, like I said, you could have a Scrum team that has a Kanban board, and they also have they're also using Scrum, and they have a Scrum board for their iterative cycle. So, in conclusion, for some teams, Kanban may be all they need to effectively manage their day-to-day development. Kanban ensures that there is a seamless flow to your production line, regardless of the type of work you do. However, you might like to use Kanban alongside a good Scrum framework, which is Kanban, which will provide even more structure and organizational improvements. So yeah, you will find variations out there. When you are using Kanban, obviously there's need for it, that's why you're using it. And it's a continuous improvement process environment, whether it's Kanban or whether it's Scrum. Again, context matters. That's always one thing I will tell you. Context matters. And this is where your experience as a Scrum Master will come in how to help them. Like Franca said a good Scrum Master came in and helped them to sort things out, okay? You come in and it's not about, this is what we're supposed to do for Scrum. This is what we're supposed to do for Kanban. No. What is the best thing to do for this team? Again, it is not totally down to you. Because remember, the teams understand their work better than you. They understand their organization better than you. It's a case of facilitating their pain points. What is their pain points? What are the issues they are having with just using Scrum? What is their pain point? Based on their pain point, we are then collaboratively looking for the next best way to move forward. And it's not totally down to you. You are facilitating. Okay, the answers are with the team. You just need to help them get those answers out. Okay, I believe this is where my slide ends. Yes, any more questions, please? Is it clear?
Oh, it's, to some extent it is.
Yeah. If you guys have questions, please ask. And then by the time you watch the video again, by the time you reflect on other videos, it will begin to come together. It will begin to come together and do more reading on it. But like I said, even if you do more reading on it, you will still find discrepancies here and there. You read one article will tell you something. You read another article will tell you something. The most important thing is to know that, you know what, context matters. The most important thing is for you to understand what is behind what it is that you are trying to achieve. Is continuous improvement important in Kanban? Of course it is. Is retrospective important in Kanban? Of course it is. But do you have to do it every 2 weeks? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you even need to do it more frequently than that. Who knows? Context, context, context. It matters. Are we good?
So, well, can we say that I'm just trying to think in terms of how to remember the difference in terms. So Scrum is iterative, isn't
yes.
it? And
this
is continuous or repetitive or whatever we want to use.
Continuous, yeah.
Continuous, okay. So,
and so which means Kanban is good for a very, very volatile environment where requirements are just coming, like a call center.
Production lines, yeah.
Yeah, production lines, you know, call center, for example, is a production environment. So a lot of people use Kanban for production. A lot of people, because the tickets are just coming in like this. And as soon as the tickets come in, you want them to deal with it. That's why you have thousands and thousands of people in call centers.
Okay. So the concept of inspect and adapt, that only works in Scrum, doesn't it?
I just talked about retrospective. Retrospective is inspect and adapt. So even in Kanban, we are also improving. Whether you call it inspect and adapt or not, we also have to improve. So there must be a time where, when in our schedule we say, okay, we are meeting to look back and to improve. You have to improve, whether you are doing Kanban or XP or Scrum. But it may not be structured like in the case of Scrum, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. You understand?
Okay.
But in your context, you did, okay, we are meeting at the end of every month to see where we need to improve, where we need to readjust, what we need to stop, what we need to continue. It's the same. That is why how they are doing Kanban in one organization will be different from how they are doing Kanban in another organization. But understanding that the whole concept of Agile is continuous improvement, and that goes also for Kanban. But how you want to achieve that, again, will be based on your context. You could say we are meeting every week for 30 minutes just to see how well we're doing, what impediments we're having, what risk we're having. Anything, can be anything.
So, I mean, I'm just trying to, so for Kanban, SLAs are like a priority, are extremely important, isn't it?
In a call center environment, for example, like I said before, some things may be contracted out, right? So service level agreement, even within organizations, internally.
Even within, I was going to say internally, when you do like help desk and things like that.
Exactly. We need
data services, they have prioritized,
Even internally, we need SLAs. So when you are doing all of that, that is where your lead time and your cycle time comes in order for you to achieve your SLA. Yeah?
Okay, yeah, no, I'm just trying to relate it with the concept of ITIL and
IT, service desk,
service desk,
service desk, call center, whatever you want to call it, internal, external. That is the whole idea. You cannot use Sprint for that. It doesn't make sense.
Not at all.
It's got to be a ticketing system that is flowing from left to right, get to done, and then you get a ticket. Have you not seen a situation where you raise a ticket and then you get a message that they're dealing with it, and then when it's done, they'll tell you they've closed the ticket? That's like a Kanban flow.
In fact, by the time you drop the phone, you get an email to say, yes, your ticket is closed, just to say you're happy with it or something like that.
So for example, that will be a column. So for example, if you check the status, if somebody within the organization checks its status, they will see that maybe there's a column called send email, just for argument's sake. They will see that Mary reported this problem at 1 o'clock. By 1:04, it has been logged. By 1:30, they had sent her an email that it is in progress, that they are looking at it. And then by 2 o'clock, Mary got another email that the ticket is closed, the job has been resolved.
Okay.
That is all those things that has happened. It's logged. It is logged somewhere. So if I were to do an audit, if they were to do an audit, they would see exactly everything that's happened. So maybe it was somebody's job to push an email to Mary, for example. Maybe you call that inform client or inform customer.
First line, second line, and things like that.
Thank you. First line support, thank you. You know, all those kind of things.
How long it stays with the first line before it goes to the second line, and then how long before it goes to the third line.
How long, exactly. Those are the kind of measurements they are looking for in those kind of environments. Cycle time, lead time, resolution time, throughput.
Yeah. And that helps to plan capacity.
Yes.
Apologies, I'm also an auditor. Mary, you know.
Exactly, which is why you are saying all these things. Exactly. So, but every environment will vary. I need you to know that based on your context. And this is why what is really key here is that you understand Agile, you understand Scrum, you understand the concept, and then you are able to, based on the context you find yourself, based on your experience, use that understanding to help them achieve their solution, because it's a framework that you use to help them achieve their own needs, not the other way around. You don't force them to fit into a framework. You change the framework to help them.
Okay, so is it ideal then to say that in Kanban, you use the SLA to determine the velocity, or how does that work? How is the velocity taken?
Don't mix it too much with SLA. Let's not talk too much about SLA. The reason I
Okay, I'm just trying to ask, so how is team velocity measured
I'm
then?
coming. The reason I brought SLA is to explain it.
Okay.
Service level agreement is more organizational.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a business thing to say, as a business, these are our key performance indicators. Let's push that to one side. In Kanban, we don't use velocity in the same way we use velocity in Scrum.
Okay.
We don't use it like that. But you can still you can still estimate your stories if you want. Do not be surprised that you go into a Kanban environment and people are still sizing their stories. You will go to some Kanban environment, they are not sizing their stories, but they are breaking their stories based on invest to make sure it is small enough. What they are using instead is throughput, cycle time, lead time. That is their own measure. Okay. So whether they have 10 people or whether they have 7 people, or of course, it's not a very big team. They are also, it's reasonably small. They don't want it to be too big, although they can be bigger than your Scrum team. I can't even remember the last number I read now. But some teams will still use velocity. They will still size their stories, beg your pardon. Some will not size their stories. That's why I said there are so many variations of that out there.
All right.
But what they are looking for is how quickly, because remember, invest still matters here. We don't want big stories, otherwise we are struggling to finish it. We want to break down our stories as small as possible, and we want to very quickly, as we start to work on it, develop, test, validate, done. Develop, test, validate, done. We want to get those stories to the done column as soon as possible. So what we are looking at here is cycle time and lead time. That's what they are mostly looking at in the Kanban environment, as opposed to Scrum, where at the end of the 2 weeks, we are saying, what is our velocity at the end of the 2 weeks? Do you get it? Yeah. But having said that, some people still size their stories, probably for capacity management and all of that. But it's so varied. It's so varied the way people use Kanban.
Thank you.
Some have Scrum Master, some don't.
Yeah. I used Kanban for my operations team in my last role. So what used to happen was they would have lots of jobs, as you know. We have to order this, we have to do this, we have to do that, this, that, and the other. And it was becoming confusing because they forget something and they move on to this one. So it was a capacity management issue. But what it was now becoming very dark and non-transparent.
Okay.
So we decided that for transparency, let's use a Kanban board.
Exactly.
Let's see everything you have to do. Let's see how you're doing it. Let's it all be visible. So we can, so the manager is not going, the CEO was complaining that he was give a job and then 3 weeks later, no feedback, nothing. And then when he says to the team, what's happened? They're, stammering and, just they're talking gibberish. So this helped them to see what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
So that was just the use that we put Kanban to in that organization. So it wasn't, and obviously we would have work in progress and then we would discuss it. So we had meetings once a week where we look at the board and we say, what's happened to this particular one here? And then they will explain why. And then we'll say, okay, move it back to the backlog.
Yeah.
So we know that's no longer work in progress because you have this blocker, which you cannot remove. Then they put another thing on it. And so it was going on like that. And it worked really well.
That's good.
Yeah, for everyone.
But did you start with Scrum?
No, not with that team. That team was doing what they liked.
Okay.
We had a Scrum team for different purpose to do.
Okay. You now organize them with Kanban.
Yeah. So I just said when the CEO complained to me that, look, I don't know how to deal with this team. They're always saying they've done this or that, and I don't know what they're doing. I give them something, I can't see the result. So I want to be able to track them.
Exactly.
Basically. So I said
in which case, by being visible,
yes.
You see, one thing people must realize that transparency is control. It's a subtle control.
It is.
It's a subtle control because if I have to put everything out there, I'm taking responsibility for that.
Yeah.
the responsibility is on me. So
Yes.
it's a very subtle control. You don't have to come and start breathing on anybody's neck.
Exactly. And that was the ultimate purpose for that, because the CEO felt like he was losing control of that team. And they were acting independently, like, who cares? You know, I'll just say I was doing this, I'll just say I was doing that. And the CEO was thinking, no, I have to know when I gave you something, when you have finished it, what you're doing right now. You know, just give me some transparency here.
That is because, you see, these things are two ways. On the one hand, we can say, oh, this CEO is controlling. On the other hand, we can say they've given freedom to this team, but they are not taking responsibility.
Exactly.
Which seemed to be what happened here. So because they wanted freedom, but they didn't want accountability. You now have to use the Kanban board to get them to take responsibility and to be accountable for what they have committed to. That is what Kanban board does. And in that case, the CEO will now not look like a command and control person, because if those things were visual in the first place, he wouldn't have to be asking them, because it will be obvious to everybody, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's it. Thanks for that contribution. Okay, I think we can stop here. It's almost 10 o'clock.
Yes.
It's almost 10 o'clock.
It's such an interesting thing to learn. I mean, because of the things you're doing, and okay, it falls into Kanban rather than Scrum. And and I tell you, let me tell you a funny story, because when we first started,
let Mary go. She has a husband to take care of.
It's okay. Don't worry. Mary is my paddy always now.
I'm listening.
So when we first started, like I said, Euroclear started transitioning, transformation, agile transformation 2 years ago, just under 2 years. I think we had a board, and where we drew the story points, and we put 3, this one 5, and whatever. And we had the head of unit that would come every morning and take a picture of that. And basically, I'm not sure whether I told you this story. And then one day he called the manager. Oh, I don't think your team, this agile thing, I don't think they're putting enough. And why? Because what he's done is every day he will come and see what this person is working on as only 3. And he said that 3 means 3 hours.
Okay.
You understand? So it's like, oh yeah, they don't have up to 8 hours a day to record. And I have seen things going on for like, it's got 5, and they're, so it takes, it was not like, so when he accused everyone in the team of like, we are not pulling our weight, it was just like, okay, he had to be educated that no, exactly. You cannot micromanage people by coming into there and taking pictures. We didn't realize he was coming in very early and taking pictures.
Can you imagine? That's a control freak.
Yeah, eventually he went on a long-term sick, so.
He's a control freak, and of course, the transformation has not educated him.
They have, but he just felt, maybe, some people, they just believe what they want to believe, or they see what they want to see.
Yeah, that is true. And they like to micromanage, believe it or not, and you will find it out there, so be prepared for it. There are some people, it doesn't matter what you say, they want to micromanage, and you really need to take your time to coach them into a new mindset that, you know what, leave these people alone. They have committed, they are working from sprint to sprint. You will have the demo to see what they have done, okay? And, they have a capacity with which they are working. Now, your role should be much more strategic. Forget micromanaging. Start looking at how you can help them create an enabling environment. Start looking at how you can help them improve the system. Try looking at how you can help them remove organizational blockers. That is how you need to get them to start thinking. So think as a gardener who is creating an environment in which all the plants can grow and thrive and bloom. That is the mindset you want to coach them into. Okay.
Harry, just quickly.
Yes.
You know this Kanban concept.
Yes.
In call centers specifically, it's something that has been going on for a very long time.
A very, very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, when we manage IDES, it was explicitly what it's just described.
Yes, maybe, I mean, like I said, it started in the 1940s, so it's been here for a long time.
Yeah, maybe it's making it slicker, and it wasn't called Kanban, and then things were recorded in the flagship systems that the call centers or the organizations had. But the lead time, the cycle time, the whatever time, service delivery, all of that was how they used to manage.
Absolutely, Sylvia. It's been around for a long time. It's been around for a long time. We can't talk about Kanban and not talk about Toyota. It's not a new concept at all.
Yeah, it's been call centers actually, as I was listening to you.
Yeah. Kanban, Lean and Kanban. It's been around for a very long time. Very, very long time.
Especially in production lines.
Yes. The whole idea of Kanban and Lean is a concept taken from manufacturing. It's a concept. That's why we always talk about Toyota.
Like almost every Scrum Master that has gone to work with JLR have only lasted 6 months. Do you know there's a good story going there?
That has worked with what?
JLR, Jaguar Land Rover. They've gone into JLR.
Why?
And I don't know why, but after 6 months, they just let them go.
Maybe it's a difficult environment.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult. I think the people are not willing, or maybe Scrum Masters are just too imposed. We just don't know. But the story is that almost every person I've known that has gone into JLR.
If that is the case, then it must be the organization that has a problem. Anyway, let's call it a day. Because there are some organizations, I'm telling you, they are difficult when it comes to agile transformation.
I know.
They don't want to change, and you're going to be met with those kind of resistance. But you see, one thing I always tell people, Scrum Master, is look, you have to keep your cool. Because remember, you have to live the values. Remember, it's not just about what you say, it's about what you do. So how you come across, even if you have an idiot for a product owner, or there are some product owners that are difficult. You are trying to help them, but they are difficult. I'm telling you, you are trying to help them deliver value. You are trying to help them prioritize the product backlog. Instead, they'll be coming to interrupt the team. Instead, they want to do micromanagement with the team. You'll be surprised what you will meet out there. But you have to keep your cool as a Scrum Master that is promoting the lean, agile mindset. You can't afford to lose your cool. You just keep educating. You just keep helping them as much as you can. So there you go.
Thank you, Mary.
Let's
Thank you, Mary.
Have a lovely Saturday. So tomorrow, I think we still need 2 people to do their presentation, I believe. So tomorrow we'll do that. Then tomorrow, there was something I noted that I wanted to do tomorrow. I can't remember now. Jira. We're going to look at Jira tomorrow. Jira, and then have we done fishbone analysis? I'm trying to remember.
No.
We'll do that tomorrow. I knew there was something else. Fishbone, it's just a 5-10 minute presentation. We'll do fishbone analysis, and then we'll start looking at Jira tomorrow. So from what I can tell now, we are still going to meet next weekend because I want you to understand Jira. So we're still going to meet one more time before the collective timing sessions end. So one more time, and so next weekend will be our last collective session, and then we'll move on to one-to-one session. Mr. T, people are already looking at his CV. So the rest of you better bring your CV. Let's work on it. Let's work on your CVs. Before you know it now too, Mr. T will get a job by God's grace.
Oh, we pray for that. Amen. A big amen to that.
Amen.
Oh, that would be so nice.
So let's work on your CVs.
And I will do my testimonial for you.
By the grace of God, though. By the grace of God. By the grace of God. So no wahala, have a lovely Saturday.
Thank you, Mary.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
God bless you.
Bye.
Wow.